Norvisi, and these are my reflections. You know, it's actually interesting because for me, growth hasn't been linear, right? When I started my career, I actually thought that you start, you do, maybe one role, you go to the next stage and the next stage, and it's just going to continue from there. But that didn't happen, right? There were times when I felt like I wasn't even moving forward. I felt like I was stuck in the same role for a long time. There were times when I didn't even enjoy the work I was doing, right? And I've also realized that sometimes growth means taking lateral roles. Also, I realized that the things that I needed to learn for me to go to my next stage, they seem completely out of reach, right? For example, I started my research career in qualitative research. It came to me naturally because I'm extroverted, I'm a people person, but I saw that the only way I was going to be able to get ahead was if I learned quantitative research, and that was very difficult, right? But I had to, take some of those risks and try my best, blood, sweat, and tears, crying, to learn the quantitative research so that I could go to the next stage, right? After that stage, I started, I was moving ahead, hopping from one multinational to the other. But even with that, there were also certain things I realized. For example, that sometimes it's not only your functional expertise that's going to get you ahead. I realized at that point in my career that sometimes the soft skills become more important than the functional expertise, because the functional expertise becomes a given, but the thing that will take you to the next stage are the soft skills, right? And if I think of one of the most pivotal moments in my career, it was actually when I went back to Danone. So for context, I worked in Danone from 2019 to the end of, I think, 2021. And then I joined Twitter, which was really my dream job. I went to Twitter, spent a little over a year there, and then my entire global team was dismantled. So I was out of a job for about 4 months. I was looking for roles with different companies, and then Danone invited me to come back. It was a very, very difficult decision for me to do that because nobody wants to go back to their ex, right? But at some point, after weighing the opportunity, looking at it different ways, I thought, well, what am I really going to learn, right? Because that was a role that I had done for several years, and I felt that I had kind of maxed out. I had reached the peak of what I could have achieved in that company. But I think that going back to Danone was actually one of the best decisions I made at that point in my career, because what it did was that it helped me deepen my expertise. Yes, I was already experienced. I had done a lot of those things. I'd worked on most of the projects. I really knew the job inside out. But I think that I actually spent those last 2 years improving other skills, right? My stakeholder management, my leadership skills, my people management skills. I think that what I got from going back to Danone far exceeded the functional, right? It was more of the things that will catapult me to the next stage. And I really believe that if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't even have the role I have now. So I'm saying all this long story to say that growth is really not a straight path. Sometimes you would have to make certain trade-offs and concessions. Sometimes you may feel like you're actually going back. I really believe that no experience is wasted. Absolutely no experience is wasted, right? And even if I liken that all to what I do with Vision with V, almost every single skill that I use in Vision with V is a skill that I have used at some point in my career. Whether it is writing content, shooting content. The bottom line is that you need to keep doing what you're doing, because no experience is wasted, and all the skills you're learning now are going to come in handy one day. I think you're doing a lot, and it's going to be worth it, right? Especially those who have families. You're managing your homes, your kids. having to think up costumes for career day for your children every month. You're doing all of that, and you're still able to, manage your full-time roles. You have businesses. You are able to juggle all the needs of your business. Some of you are working on passion projects. I think that you are doing enough. But if you believe that you have it in you to do more, then you should absolutely do more, right? It doesn't mean that you should put too much pressure on yourself and feel that you have some set timeline where you need to achieve everything at once. I think that you should pace yourself, and you should know your own capacity and make sure that you are definitely using your full potential, but without burning yourself out. It's difficult for me to say if, as ambitious women, if we're doing enough, because everyone has a different capacity. And I also think that we go through different life stages where at some point we may pull back, and we may take certain things easier. But I think the bottom line is that as women, as ambitious women who are looking for progress and are looking for growth, we need to just be true to ourselves. We know deep down in our hearts the things that we want to achieve. We know what our skills are. We shouldn't hide those skills. We should put ourselves out there. If you want to try something new, do it. What's the worst? Even if you're not great at it, you will learn as you go along. But I don't think that we should hide our skills. I think that we should really just understand that life is short, and this is the life. Like, there's, we're not going to get any extra years. Let's just use the time we have to execute the ideas we have. Let's just pace ourselves according to our own capacity and push ourselves as much as we can without burning ourselves out. So a lot of people don't realize that African women have been doing this forever. Like, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, even the ones that were not educated, they were industrious. They were always looking for a way to, take care of the home, not just in terms of chores or cooking, but in terms of even finding ways to earn. Ghana has consistently been ranked amongst the countries that have the highest percentage of women-owned businesses, right? So we already have it in us, right, as African women. But the thing is that as the world is changing, we also need to get with the times, right? We need to do more. We need to be sharper about how we run our businesses. We need to keep, putting the effort in to grow in our careers. Yes, success would mean different things for different women at different stages of their lives. For one woman, success is getting married, starting her family. That's valid. It's completely valid, right? And for another woman, it would mean climbing up the ladder, becoming the CEO, or becoming a managing director of a large company. That is also valid, right? So I think that, there's just a general misunderstanding that Ghanaian women don't want to work hard. They just want things on a silver platter. They want men to pay for everything they do. And some of those women exist, but there are a lot of women who are doing, their best. They're working hard. They're putting in the work. They're, doing all they have to do to grow in their careers. So at the end of the day, you define what success means to you. And if it means you would stay home, take care of your children, that is fine. That is successful. If it means you will climb the corporate ladder all the way to the very top, that is also fine. If it's about building a successful business, that is also fine. The bottom line is that you will have to put in the work, and you'd have to do whatever it takes. You would have to put in the work. If I was talking to 23-year-old Norvisi, I would tell her that it's not everything you say. Sometimes, if something comes in your head, don't let the intrusive thoughts win. If something comes into your head or into your mind and you are in a meeting, you don't just blurt it out. You need to think of a more politically correct diplomatic way of saying things. I'm still very opinionated. I've always been very opinionated, but I think very early in my career, I didn't always know how to articulate it in a way that was tactful. So if I had to talk to a 23 or 24-year-old me, a 24-year-old Norvisi, I'll tell her that sometimes you need to take a deep breath and just smile, and then find a nice way of saying certain things, especially when you're talking to superiors. That is what I would have said. It's hard for me to think of what the biggest risk has been, because I feel like I've taken quite a number of risks. The first being that even entering the business world when I didn't have any business related education. You know, I studied French. I had always planned to either go to law school or go and work in foreign service, right? Because for me, that seemed like a logical next step. So entering the business world with absolutely no business experience was really difficult. I think it's paid off. It didn't feel that way in the beginning, but I think it's paid off because I've had to learn everything from scratch. Another risk I would say is getting up and deciding to move to a francophone African country. I think that's one of the things that has paid off a lot. It was difficult, it was exciting, but very challenging, adapting to a new culture, new ways of working. It was my first time working on the client side because previously I had worked with research agencies, and that was quite tough, right? I struggled a lot, to be very honest. I struggled a whole lot. And I think that it paid off. It was difficult at the time. I made a whole lot of mistakes, but I think that because I made those mistakes, it allowed me to learn much earlier than I would have if I had followed the regular path. So I would say that those are the two things that come to mind when I think of some of the biggest risks I've taken and what they've done for my career. I had to let go of the idea that corporate politics is bad. It's not bad. There's politics everywhere you go. You can't escape it. It doesn't matter if you're working in a small company, a mid-sized company, a big company. It doesn't matter if you're working in, civil service, the government. Even if you're working in the family business, there's always going to be some form of corporate politics. And I know someone who used to say that if you don't play the politics will play you. It's like whether you actively play the politics or not, you are already in the game, right? So you have to just learn how to navigate it and do your best for the politics to work for you. I used to think that when I enter a company, I'll say, I don't want to play politics. So if I feel like I'm being dragged into politics, I will do my best to not participate. If it meant people send very political emails not responding, because I thought that not responding means I'm taking the high road. But not responding to them felt like I'm not on top of what I'm doing. Or, it almost looks like, okay, when we ask you why something hasn't been done, and I know they're being political, instead of just explaining, I would ignore, because I thought that they are trying to drag me into a political game and I don't want to be in the political game. But I learned over time that has more negative than positive. The effect is more negative than positive. You have to learn how to participate in corporate politics without being underhanded, because underhanded politics is also not good. All the backbiting, the gossiping, that's also not good, because in corporate institutions, there are a lot of overlapping relationships. So more often than not, if you're gossiping about someone, the likelihood that they know is very high. So I think the point is, understand that there's politics everywhere. Just learn how to navigate it in a way that is healthy so that you don't get dragged into the mud with the negative people.